glad to hear you called me the other day and that you were back safe and sound, because I've thought about you quite a bit, and I'd gotten a number of things. You were working with marsh Arabs or something, and there were some pictures you'd sent and that, but it was sort of sporadic, you know.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad you're back safe and sound, and welcome to Manhattan Network.
I'm glad too, and you'd been on my mind since I got back, but it just wasn't quite the time.
This is the time. This is the time. Here and now. Be here now. And welcome. Welcome very much to our conversation. It's a great pleasure to welcome to the program a very good acquaintance, friend of Conversations host, that being myself, Harold Channer. His name is Gordon Kindlon, and he is we got him down as a humanitarian worker. We've done programming with him in the past where he recounted some of the work he had done in what was the former Yugoslavia in terms of helping. We're going to let him talk about it, but in helping in a human way the people that were caught up in a wartime situation there. And I'm here to say that he's just come back from 2 years, and he's going to lay out the details and share with us. But let's say roughly 1 year might have been roughly in the south of Iraq, and a year in Yugoslavia. He's been, in Afghanistan. And, it couldn't be more timely in terms of the situation. Just back for a month or so in New York. And, Gordon, welcome Conversations. It's so good to see you, and I'm glad you're back safe and sound and anxious to talk with you about your experiences.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here and glad to be back on the program second time around. It's hard to believe. It was 2.5 years ago, I think.
I guess it was,
something like this.
Before all of this.
Before that, and I had no idea where I'd end up.
Maybe we can pick it up a little bit, because we did in the last program. But maybe share a little of your background, okay?
Sure.
Because humanitarian worker, you're on the side of the angels, that sort of thing. But why don't you share a little bit of your own background? Then we want to get up an updating on the on-the-ground realities of the experiences you had in Iraq and Afghanistan. But Can you share your background?
Sure. We'll rewind to, let's say, April of 2003, the last time we met, just to keep it
on tape.
Just to keep it short, right?
Yeah, right.
And that was a time I was quite involved in the protests against the impending war and the war that started in March. And
remember that great march on 15th of February?
Yeah, we were there.
They were. I know. We too. I had a great time that day, and all over the world there was this
10 million, something like this, maybe world protesters,
the largest ever. You know.
It seems I hope that it's nice to know that they're out there, but we're not hearing that voice as much as we were in the lead up and in the immediate aftermath.
I have a friend, J.C. Kapoor, who publishes a thing from India, and he had that, and I was reading it yesterday. And and I'm sorry I don't have it right in front of me, but it was staggering, the history of mankind, that they had something like only 260 years or something out of the whole sweep of human history that wasn't consumed with war.
Mm. And where do we fall today?
So the people are all saying, let's not do the war, and the guys are fighting the wars. It seems like it's just part of the historical pattern, and it continues. You know.
I'm a firm believer in evolution.
All right, yeah. Well,
I think we can get past it, and people, I think
that's the good basic thing. Yeah, okay.
We've evolved physically to be Homo sapiens sapien, as we were talking about before.
Yeah.
But emotionally and spiritually, we're sticking ourselves. We're staying stuck in an old paradigm.
Well, it's like the brain and the mind and the consciousness. There's a reptilian core, the fight or flight, and all those things are built right into it. And it's all just a series of singularities that we've transcended and come to be in this state we're in. And now we're at a point where if the weapons are there, if they were to be unleashed, apparently, it would mean the end of the whole species that is taking the measure of this whole universe. Where it's an existentially challenging way, in a way that historically is unprecedented, it seems to me.
It is. We'll bring it back to something a little bit less overwhelming.
All right.
And we'll go back to I guess April of 2003.
Mm-hmm.
Despite my own misgivings and really strong feelings about the situation in Iraq and the U.S. involvement in Iraq, I did end up going with a nonprofit based in Portland, Oregon, called Mercy Corps.
That was after we did the program. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Went down and as I was interviewing for the job, I met Joe Wilson and some other people.
Kidding. The Joe Wilson,
who's now getting certainly more than 15 minutes of fame. And hopefully his story ends up being maybe the straw that breaks the camel's back.
I hear you. What you're saying,
God,
Mr. Rogue.
God help us. Anyway, met him and got this offer to go with Mercy Corps to.
Could you share a little of Mercy Corps and how did
Mercy
you come
Corps.
to be an associate? And you were always on doing humanitarian work.
Not always, but I'd done two tours or two missions, one in Kosovo and one in Macedonia.
Right.
The one in Macedonia was with Mercy Corps.
It was, okay.
I knew them because I'd worked alongside them in Kosovo. I was working with UNHCR in Kosovo, and we had worked side by side with Mercy Corps. They do a lot of good work around the world.
And helping people. I remember, if I'm not mistaken, you were saying you were on the ground and the guys were sending the missiles, and you were on the ground where the missiles were coming down. Or you had that take on things in terms of the human devastation. I think that was you said something to that effect.
I mean, I have said, and I think our work, this humanitarian work, is kind of inextricably linked to wars and to disasters.
Yeah.
So, sometimes the armies make the messes and we go clean them up.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of that, there's the cynical side, which says, I've got to wait for another war to get a job, which is a bit sad. Or wait for
it is, and that, in a sense, that's a metaphor, too. That and I was struck in this article. I just reading. It's a very good journal that he puts out. But they had it. The wording was such that it was just a rarely brief period of time in the sweep of human history that the species wasn't involved in serious wars. And they had a definition of it killed more than 1,000 people or something, that kind of thing. But it's just been a bloody, it's like a bunch of mafia dons fighting over territory, who's going to control the north side or something, and that's the history of it. And they keep doing it, and the people seem not to want it, but the people get led around, and so...
and fall into it. We've fallen into it, too. And, you talk to good people around this country. Yeah. You talk to good people around Afghanistan and Iraq, and there's always a justification in there somewhere for war. And I always come at it from a very naive angle of, we can put down our weapons and solve our problems together.
We haven't seemed to have been able to do that.
But you talk to people and and there's always a frustration. And frankly, it becomes more and more understandable when you're in these situations and you see, the oppression that groups have felt, and they feel like there's no other way but to take up arms. So.
Yeah, and some of those things in the Balkans, they're fighting over things that happened 1,000 years ago.
Yeah.
Or the Palestinians and Israelis are fighting over who was there thousands of years ago, or things that go back, and they're very existentially tied into these identities. They have wrapped up with these national entities they stand for, and they fight and kill one another. But anyway, and the Mercy Corps and so forth, you were building houses and things?
No, actually we went and I was asked to open up an office for Mercy Corps in Amarah, Iraq, and Amarah is right along the Tigris River, about 2 hours north of Basra and a couple hours south of Baghdad.
Okay. Shia country?
It's all Shia. It's all Shia, so everyone's name is Ali or Hussein or Haidar, or it's a strong-knit community. And I don't know exactly the differences so much.
You went there when then?
July 2003.
Boy, right in the
just after
in the wake of everything.
In the wake, and that was after Bush had uttered the famous words of mission accomplished. All this bogus.
And you were there working in order to do, what was the mission of the Mercy Corps?
The mission of Mercy Corps was post-conflict reconstruction, things like this, rebuilding cultural institutions. That was where we really took the focus of the program. We were trying to rebuild libraries. The bulk of our work when I was there was rebuilding schools and getting, but doing it more because the communities asked, identified these...
community development?
Community development. We would go into a community and make form a group of community leaders and peers and representatives, and they would identify priorities in their community.
And then get the community organized.
And then they would contribute either labor or some of their own resources, and we would use our money, which was USAID money, so at least some of the United States' vast resources does go to, more or less to good work. And we rebuilt schools, and I think that made a difference.
Okay, now that they said that we were going to be greeted with open arms and flowers and so forth and that kind of a thing. The insurgency has become very intransigent now, as we speak, in August or coming up in August of 2005. But they were going to be so that did you see yourself as being collaborating with George Bush's policy in Iraq, that some people are going to go out and fight, and then there's going to be
Certainly
the need to build it up? And did you change your feeling about his policy or the policy of the United States and join the team of the United States effort in the country of Iraq? Could you share some of those things?
It's a complex subject.
Yeah.
I went to Iraq wearing sort of a badge of honor, having protested against the war.
Yeah, seriously,
and I felt very strongly about it. And then I got there, and I was surrounded by people who had just been "quote unquote" liberated by George Bush and his very strong-headed efforts. So I had to briefly. It only took me a short time to realize that in the end, it's still a failure to go to war, and we see now the results of that. But there was a time when I really said, "Gosh, maybe I was wrong," because all these people, my friends, are now finally liberated from the tyranny of Hussein, and we can't argue at all that Hussein was a good guy.
Did you feel the same thing about Yugoslavia when you were working there? I mean, we had Tito, and he was seen as a Stalinist kind of person who held Yugoslavia together. Now it's divided up into all these countries. And
I could make conjecture about all this stuff historically speaking, but I'm not a historian. I'm more of a human witness.
Right. Okay.
And so we can add.
You've really been on the spot in Kosovo, Bosnia, and
Bosnia. Yeah,
not
Macedonia.
Which right. Okay. Yeah. But in there, and then Iraq and
Afghanistan. Let me speak to this other question of
the real heart of the whole thing. Yeah.
About feeling whether or not I was a collaborator or like this. There was this undercurrent sometimes thinking like, well, if I do good work, it's only going to reinforce George Bush's image of going and democracy spreading, and if I wish democracy could spread, but the means and the ends are always inextricably linked. So democracy is never going to spread this way. And this other thought that I was thinking.
This way, by meaning the force of arms?
By going in with, shock and awe. How are you going to spread democracy with shock and awe? Greeting us with open arms, I will say that what I saw of Iraq, if you go there without weapons, Iraqis will greet you with open arms.
That's interesting.
Go there with weapons and with cash to take care of the infrastructure that's been neglected by Hussein and also by us and is being destroyed by by the so-called terrorists. The infrastructure that is continually being possibly rebuilt now, but is also being re-raised by the ongoing conflict. Go there without weapons, and see how they treat you, and I guarantee you'll be safe. Go there with
even in Iraq now. Would you say that now? I mean that
my experience of it was. I mean, I'm as white as they come. Yeah. I'm as American as they
like
come.
Scandinavian or something.
And I went into the market, and people just wanted to know who I was, and I never felt in danger, personally in danger. I felt stress all around me. I felt like the top could blow off any minute. Yeah. There were incidents where I was caught up and luckily not harmed, but never did I feel that because I was an American or because I was Christian or because, no. Because I went there with an open heart and with nothing in my hands except. You
don't think it was fools rush in where angels fear to tread?
Definitely.
On your part, maybe it was your naivete,
and
you didn't realize
also.
what a dangerous
Harold,
situation.
you
Do you
me
realize
than
you
you
could have
understand.
been seized as a hostage?
At the time, it wasn't that whole trend hadn't begun.
They hadn't cottoned on to that yet, huh?
No, I left just as that was starting.
And it was partly because it was hotting up that way that you decided to leave?
No, I think it was. I mean,
how long were you there, for me?
About 9 months.
9 months, right in the aftermath of the invasion and the work like that. So that was a very crucial time that you were there. Your reporting is really very important. Yeah. And you sensed that they welcomed you in a human way. You made very many good friends.
Habibi Elbi. You know,
what does that mean?
It means Habibi means my love. But this is it's such a rich and such a loving and such a brotherly and family culture where you would be taken in.
They have a great sense of a code of honor, don't they?
This is more. I was relating more from Afghanistan, and we can move on to that.
Yeah.
And I don't know. That wasn't the sense I got in Iraq is much more of a Mediterranean and sort of open and inviting culture.
Welcoming, yeah.
But Afghanistan is a more closed culture, but also very honorable and very masculine.
In both cases, you think? More so in Afghanistan. More tribal.
I wouldn't make that parallel. I would say that the Iraqi culture was more of an open and jubilant culture. And Habibi is all you ever hear. And I learned a little bit of Arabic, and when I went on to Afghanistan, and I was thinking, there's some parallel between the two cultures. I started calling people Habibi or trying to find the Afghan equivalent. And it's not that kind of a culture.
Yeah.
It's more of a closed culture where they will let you into their home and they'll protect you, and they'll give you the last meal that they have. But at the same time, it's not this. They don't throw open their arms, and they don't. It's different. It's not as warm. It's a more. If you see the houses that they have, they're all
Afghanistan.
In Afghanistan. They're compounds that are surrounded by very thick walls, and I think that's representative also of the culture.
Yeah.
They'll let you in and they'll welcome you and they'll protect you, but they are protected themselves by walls.
And you're getting mixed up with Afghanistan. Mesopotamia is the seat of civilization. It's got a few thousand years of civilization. They were a highly developed country. They had a high literacy rate. They had a huge number of women involved in politics.
They even had 1,000 years ago. They even had gas lamps in the streets in the capital.
It's a very rich cultural civilization, so more than it's been sort of violated. But now, how did you happen to be assigned to the town where you were? And was it significant that you were in a Shia community, the south of down near Basra, and that it is Shia? And maybe you could make that distinction in some terms that we could understand it better.
And again,
is it Protestant Catholic, or what analogy could we make between Sunni and Shia that give us some meaning and maybe a better understanding of what's going on in Iraq from your having been on the ground, lived among the people?
I didn't explore that question too much, but I got the sense that everywhere I went, whether it was Baghdad or in the Shia South or in the Kurdish North, I was always welcomed. I was welcomed.
You have good social skills.
This might help.
Yeah.
This might help.
But you do. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But
You're
I
not
know
arrogant at all. Yeah.
But my feeling is that as an experimenter in this social experiment right now, just by being there and by being American or whatever, that anyone who opens themselves or who comes humbly would be welcome. I mean, this is I think if we all kind of go humbly towards one another, we're all going to be just fine. But we come with so many presuppositions and so many agendas and so many guns that we're never going to get anywhere.
So you still think? And do you think the situation has deteriorated in Iraq?
Absolutely.
Seems that way to me. It seems
Absolutely.
to me you must be looking at it through very, educated, knowledgeable eyes. But
I haven't looked back so much. I went on to Afghanistan and I wanted to learn a bit about Afghanistan, and I'm in touch not as frequently as I'd like to be with my colleagues, my former Iraqi colleagues, and
friends.
Absolutely.
You made a lot of friends.
Yeah, I mean, but these are the friends I made, are the people that I worked with, and it's the same applies in Afghanistan.
It was community development kind of stuff?
Yeah, community development where I mean, it takes different shapes, but
That's a very good thing.
But
I mean,
the guys that I...
We used to have a thing called the Peace Corps. I guess we still do.
Yeah, we still do.
Is it along the lines of Peace Corps
it's
mentality that maybe you were involved with?
I've heard great things about the Peace Corps. The nice thing about the Peace Corps is they really, really live on the ground. And there's different strata. You know, with NGOs, you get a nice house generally, but you don't get paid so much, and you're closer to the community. And then you get to the UN, and you get paid a bunch more money, and you get there's translators around you and white vehicles around you, and slowly but surely the walls go up, and you get further away from the culture. So you've got Peace Corps and really, really kind of grassroots organizations that go in and are on the ground, and then you've got NGOs which are a little bit encapsulated.
Was the Mercy an NGO?
They're an NGO.
Yeah.
Non-profit.
They're based where?
In Portland.
Portland. They've been around a long time?
Yeah, I think since 1979.
1979. We used to have the Peace Corps back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Is that still operative, and is it still functioning? And is
ask someone else, but I mean, they're definitely still operative.
Did you find Peace Corps people around in the south of Iraq?
No, Peace Corps go into stable places and
more into stable. They wouldn't go to that. You were really on the front lines in a sense, then. And you were not at all worried, or you weren't apprehensive for your personal safety or anything, that sort of thing? I may be overemphasizing because I'm not.
No, there were days. I mean, my underlying sense when I went was that I'm protected in this life. Whether I die or not die, you got to do things you believe in.
Be here now.
Right. So I didn't really feel fear for my life. But then there were times when things were getting very hot in like August and September of 2003.
Literally and figuratively. It gets pretty warm, I understand.
It's the hottest place I've ever been. It's like 140 degrees.
140?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Serious. No,
I thought I was going to perish today in New York.
Well, 120. It's dry heat, you know.
Yeah, I know. Anyway, it makes a big difference.
It's still hot.
I can remember I was in Kansas in 1956 in the United States Army. We went to Death Valley in California, and it was a great relief to get out of Kansas because it was dry.
So humid.
Yeah, it was cold at night in the desert. Is it that way there?
Yeah,
it's like cold at night even?
Much cooler.
You want a blanket at night?
Much cooler, but we would actually, we would sleep on the roof at night until too many shots. You'd hear guns. Like, this is the one thing about Iraq when I was there. We would hear gunfire every day, especially in the nighttime. In Amara, we would hear homes being literally blown up almost twice a week, and these were old Baathist homes, and the new powers that be would come in and eject them, and they're very polite. They would often like ask them to leave or send a strong message. They wouldn't blow up the family; they'd just blow up the house, so that the Baaths couldn't come back. But now, from what I'm in touch with my friends there, and I think it's a complex feeling for them because it's not liberation, it's not democracy. They're under siege now, more from the Shia clerics that are now being taken, that are kind of taking control.
In the South particularly, or in the country as a whole? I mean, Sistani and all that.
I think around the country. Sistani has a great name from everything I've ever heard, but it's not. It's people that are abusing religion and the tenets of Islam that are taking over, and they're very, very.
Is that extreme. Associated with Shia particularly? I mean, and the Shia was the religion of Iran, and they had the revolution of '79 in Iran.
I can't. I mean,
Khomeini and all that.
Another friend of mine told me that if I ever have a chance to talk to journalists, and here I am, that to let them know that basically the Shia part of Iraq is now becoming a proxy state of Iran.
All right, that's important. That is very important.
So which seems to me to be kind of defeats the purpose of U.S. interest there. But again, who knows what U.S. interests
And you
are
lived
there.
among that. You had gunfire going off at night as you slept on your roof, and you weren't concerned for your personal safety.
We actually had.
I mean, gunfires and bombs going off and things. It's a little hard to fathom.
But it's all
it would upset me.
It's all well directed. There's a couple concepts that I'd like to inform viewers about.
Please do. Yeah.
One is inshallah.
Inshallah, yeah.
Okay.
God willing. Yeah.
Exactly. So we don't have this sense. We have this sense, especially in New York, that everything's under our control, and if we only package ourselves better and wake up earlier and eat the right supplements, everything's going to work out. But it's a much more relaxed sense that God is taking care of things. And if you die, if your family member dies, you're in pain, but at the same time, it's part of a grand plan. And in Afghanistan, it's similar. They say in Charlotte they don't speak Arabic, but they speak Arabic religious phrases.
Urdu? No.
Urdu is Pakistan, and they speak Farsi and Dari, which is the Afghan dialect of Farsi, and Pashto, which is more in the south.
Pashto are real warriors, I think. Yeah?
Beautiful, beautiful men.
Beautiful people, right? Yeah.
Big beards and turbans and black eyeliner, and I mean it's an impressive show. But at the same time, to detract from all this masculinity, they have no understanding of gender relations from my experience, and they refer to their women as luggage. And so this is a generalization, and there are characteristics that are really honorable and really to be emulated from Afghanistan. But then there are characteristics that some of us can offer them. It's an exchange.
Yeah, and this is what you're wrestling with personally. You and your friend, you've made a lady friend who was in Afghanistan, Consuelo, if I'm not mistaken, and you're both trying to wrestle with some of these questions now that you're back here in the United States in a kind of breathing phase and so forth. Maybe we could go from that time in Iraq to Afghanistan. You were there for about 9 months, did I hear you say?
In Iraq for 9 months.
And you left because it was dangerous?
No, I was.
I can understand that real easily.
No, I had a year contract.
Yeah.
And I was heading an office, and I'd actually never felt so connected to my work. But I was.
How many were in the office?
Something like 30, 35.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Quite a sizable group.
Yeah, we were doing good work. It was a great team, and I feel really fortunate that after I left, I actually
you started the office, huh?
I opened up the office but only I couldn't have done it without the help of an older Lebanese gentleman who had done a lot of work
knew the scene
in Iraq and spoke Arabic, and I couldn't have done it without this guy.
Yeah, good.
But we opened the office together. After 9 months, I got a job offer in Afghanistan with the UN, and I was getting tired of my work and just getting burnt out, and I thought maybe the change of scenery. I was always politically very keen on seeing things for myself rather than hearing things through the news. So I took advantage of the opportunity, and it was sad to say goodbye, but at the same time I knew I would be leaving fairly soon. It turns out, in retrospect, that a week after I left, I did a full handover to a very nice guy who was Tunisian.
To the office in Iraq.
Yeah. To the
and the
Amara
work
office.
continues there?
Well, a week after I left and I'd done this handover, the whole country was basically evacuated, because this is when the country kind of blew up from the aftermath of those contractors in Fallujah that were strung up, and then
the invasion of Fallujah was awful.
Yeah, and
seems to me. I'm sure we get it here to the degree of.
I was never in Fallujah, so I don't know. But that's when you got the sense it was getting very hot, and we actually had some incident just before we left, and our car got mobbed by a group of young men, but we all came out safely.
You didn't see that you didn't see as you were doing that you were at the eye of the hurricane. I mean, it seems that way from an outsider's perspective. We're looking at NBC News reports and things, and you were really on the spot, and you got your car connected.
You know what? I'll tell you. I mean,
angry mobs and bombs going off.
That was a frightening moment. But I'll tell you, when I think back to those times and think about the connection with people that I had there, and I think about New York and how antiseptic or how rapid pace and how unwilling and inflexible things are here
in New York.
Yeah, I mean,
really.
Right here.
That's an interesting take.
I feel like in some ways there was so much more richness and openness there that who cares if you die? If you die among friends, But if you're spending your whole life like trying to prove a point in New York, that can get a bit tiring.
Yeah, it can be, and also kind of jaded. You could get jaded pretty easily here and that kind of thing. And so you were on the spot where something was going on, but
no, but it is stressful. It is stressful, and I was actually.
You like cross-cultural contact with people.
It's the only thing. I mean, this is the world we live in, and it's time to wake up.
That's important. That attitude you have is the one that's really important, so we can try to understand the other side.
Vermont's a great state, but I couldn't live there. Let's put it, because there's a lot of there's beautiful people of every stripe, but I like to see the different stripes.
Well, you've been born into the right world. We got a whole lot of different cultures and everything. You've been right at the eye of the hurricane. I'm sorry, I see it that way, and I congratulate you on it. I think it's really wonderful, and it's a good way to. It's part of a life well spent. Now, you were there and you handed it over, and then there was an opportunity in the country of Afghanistan
to help with the elections.
Did you see that was like going out of the pan into the frying pan into the fire, or what was it like?
Well, my first reaction getting to Afghanistan, first of all, was that it was a bit of a fashion show. That there was coming from one very small town in Iraq where there were only a few NGOs, all doing very kind of grassroots work. There wasn't this infrastructure, this NGO infrastructure. To Afghanistan, where there had been an aid community for years and years and years, even throughout the Taliban and before. And there's very entrenched UN community.
And U.S. aid, when you mean that?
No, aid community, meaning like humanitarian international assistance.
There had been that for a while.
For a long time. So you see people who have been there for a long time, who've made a career in Afghanistan. There are social clubs for internationals there. There are lots and lots of white vehicles driving.
White vehicles, I hear you say. That's
4x4.
Yeah.
This is what we get around in. So I was happy to have a social life all of a sudden.
And were you going into a well-established program with a good house and a good, comfortable situation?
Actually, no.
What was it that you had opted for, the opportunity in Afghanistan, if you could lay it out?
Good question. I went along to help with the election. I was doing logistical support for the election. For Karzai, which was kind of I think everyone knew in advance that it was a foregone conclusion.
After the Jirga Lorga or Lorga Jirga?
Loya
Jirga,
But I went, in some ways, yes, I went from the frying pan to the fire because, well, the one thing was nice is I didn't hear gunshots anymore.
You didn't hear gunshots
in Afghanistan.
In the quiet Afghanistan?
No, but they sent me straight away to Ghazni, which is in southeast, and it was kind of a bit of a hotbed. It's a famous historical town. It's where the Taliban is pushing up. It's
right
where
in the middle of the tribal
it's kind of on a fault line of Pashtun and Dari.
Would Pashtun be in what's that town in Pakistan that has all the gun makers and everything? Peshawar or something. Yeah. But the Pashtun and then that's a very warrior-like group of people, and that identity is very strong.
Yeah,
that tribal identity among those peoples is very strong. And you were in the Pashtun area?
It was just kind of along the fault line, I think.
So you're going down toward Kandahar, but a little east, right?
On the same road to Kandahar from Kabul.
You were on the main highway?
Yeah.
Between the two? And
right
you were about two-thirds of the way to Kandahar?
No, maybe a third of the way.
A third of the way, and that's where you were. And what were you sent there to do? And
to help prepare for the election, which meant...
prepare for the election.
Running an office, getting furniture built, getting ballot boxes and voting screens and all this very kind of nuts and bolts stuff. It wasn't really my thing, but
again, did you feel? Excuse me, but I just wonder, were you a collaborator in Mr. Bush's view of things that you have been so against? Had you decided to join the forces of? You know what I mean?
Well, let's put it this way.
How do you deal with that question?
Let's put it this way. If I came back and said that, Bush is doing great work and unfolding, helping democracy spread throughout the world, then I'd be a collaborator. But I think, we all come with our own view, with our own set of eyes, and we come back with our own expression of what we saw. And, we live in this world of realpolitik where realpolitik dominates, and in some ways, I think, sure, it's better to have some emerging pseudo-democracy in Afghanistan than it is to have the Taliban. But, all these same cultural issues that existed before still exist in a different way. Women still walk around in burqas. There's no equality of the sexes in Afghanistan. But maybe we're getting to that. But, frankly, the one point that I think is so important for us to recognize is it doesn't matter if they're wearing a burqa in Afghanistan. to us in America. I mean, I don't mean that lightly. Just but stay with me here.
Yeah.
What matters is what's happening here. What matters is the truth that we're experiencing. And are we experiencing truth? I mean, are we watching TV and just buying what we're being told? Are we watching a little bit of cable access TV and getting diverse views? Because if it's not evident to people now that we're essentially as a country living a sad lie, then that's unfortunate that people aren't waking up.
We're living a sad life, the United States of America, in its foreign policy objectives.
Well, and I think even in domestic policy, I'm not here to overly criticize Americans or even George Bush, because we need to start spreading the love, sharing the love, even with George Bush, even with red states. No more time to prove that we're right or they're wrong.
Yeah,
or
there's
anything.
been so much of that, hasn't there? Yeah.
But the lie is that
usually we're right, and they are definitely wrong.
Yeah,
that's the thing. That's
there's no they anymore. It's all we. So there's no point in proving that.
Well, that would be a very good thing if we would get to that. But I'm afraid a lot of people see things along we/they lines. You know, Palestinians see Israelis, Israelis see Palestinians, Arabs see those lines are still all there, and we're in a situation existentially so challenging because the weapons that are existing now in the United States is such a superpower.
Hyper is right.
Hyperpower, the French call it, and so forth. And the Times said that there's two big sources of power. The United States, superpower, and then public opinion. You've been in countries, Iraq and in Afghanistan and other areas of the world. The idea that there's a great number of the people of the world who are very incensed, if that's the right word, against the general thrust of American foreign policy is reported often. Do you think that is the case, or what is the feeling of the people? You lived among them.
My sense is that everywhere I've been, I ask similar questions, and even lately I've been asking people here on a kind of a spot survey, what do you think of the quote, "support our troops," which we see everywhere, which is getting a lot of people, emotional in one way or another. And is that most people are just going along for the ride because they don't know what else to do.
Right.
But everyone I talk to has an intelligent core, and I think when you give access to that core, people open up and they tell you, well, I'm going along for the ride. I don't know how to change things.
Are you talking about people?
I'm talking about people there. I mean, people
Iraqis,
Afghanistan,
and
Afghans, Iraqis. There's very complex emotions. I mean, if they're welcoming the United States as their liberator and very glad that George Bush had the cojones to come in and blow Saddam Hussein out of the water, I don't think that also means that they've forgotten about the sanctions in Iraq that led to so many needless deaths. And I don't think that
about 500,000 young children, I think under 5, by our hands.
When we talk about cultures that that have this the sense of revenge, or they have memories that are generations and generations deep, so they don't think in 30-second time spots like we do. They can't forget that we were involved in supporting Hussein when he was against Iran in the 80s. And
well, then we were if I'm not mistaken, the very real threat was fundamentalist Shia Khomeini government. They just seized all our hostages at the embassy, and they're holding Mr. Carter hostage in the White House, and they were threatening to spread a Shia-based fundamentalist Islamic threat to the
well,
Persian
guess what?
Gulf.
And then
we backed him the same way we backed Osama bin Laden fighting the Russians in Afghanistan. We backed Hussein as a bulwark against that Iran-based fundamentalist Shia religious movement that is now, they just got a new guy director president in Iran, and a lot of people are concerned about Iran and so forth. So that's the real power there. But he was our guy. We gave him all the arms and everything to fight Khomeini, did we not?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like that's part of the situation, the way it exists now. But the attitude of the world's population, I think a great deal of the population respects the United States or likes the United States in a certain sense.
We stand.
The people,
I mean,
but the policies seem to be pretty aggressive and worrying to a lot of people.
Yeah, The ideal of the United States stands up there with the ideal of Islam and the ideal of Christianity and the ideal of the UN Charter on Human Rights and all these great ideals, but in practice they get abused, and especially when they're in the hands of fools, to be blunt. And I don't know. My brother tells me that it's his job now to follow through with his duties. He signed up for the Marine Corps, as I was mentioning before.
He's
a great guy.
Is he really all?
No, I mean, I think he's a great guy, and he stands on the right side of things, and he's a prosecutor, and I think he's even contributing to some of the prosecutions of some of the guys who are being charged with abuse in Guantanamo.
Guantanamo, good.
But he says it's our job to vote these people in and out so that they only send him to war for the right reasons. Well, I'm starting.
That's been going on since the beginning.
I'm starting to question if our vote even matters. So, in the end, we all talk about democracy and freedom, but the most important thing we can do is just be human with one another and recognize that we're all we all come from the same. Yeah, exactly.
Except the mess, if I may, Gordon. The mess it's just something new blowing around these days, because I just threw away a line or something, but I've looked at it, and the existential reality is such that it's down now to where the weapons are so destructive now, and they're still there. And one could think, well, we defaulted the Soviet Union, everything's okay because the good guys are in control. We did drop bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We did responsible for the death of 3 to 4 million South Vietnamese people as a result. They were fighting themselves, but as a result of our incursion there for a mistake. Well, nobody ever took everyone in the dock for that and so forth. We made a mistake, and we had a problem. We have this problem, but the weapon systems that are in our control. I mean, it's really, we talk about North Korea or something, but it's we who have the real thing, and we will say it's okay because we have it.
Yeah.
Or it's okay because Israel has it, and they're responsible Übermenschen.
Yeah.
We are Übermenschen, and these people are lesser people, and everything's okay because the good guys, us, are in control.
Yeah.
And that's the same thing that's been going on since the beginning of mankind.
Well,
but the weapons are so destructive that if in a spasm of hatred, because it's all irrational things that can
or just a fuse blows. I mean, God knows.
Yeah, an interlinking thing but the weapons are so destructive now that it apparently, I don't know, this should be chapter and verse. It should be up on the Times Square or something like that. That the weapons are so destructive that it will mean the end, if they were unleashed, the end of the whole species.
Well, I'm not
whole human thing.
Harold, I'm not too worried about it because.
Inshallah?
Inshallah.
Yes.
Inshallah. Number one. And number two, we only have one life to live, and whether or not we live 40 or...
Yeah, but damn it, I got grandchildren now.
Yeah. And
it wouldn't do any good.
But
if somebody in Washington says, oops, and then they unleashed it, and at our hands, we wiped out the whole adventure called the evolution of universal consciousness.
Yeah, that would suck.
It would, wouldn't it? I mean, no, but the point being, in our lifetime, you're young. I'm a little older than you, but in our lifetime, we've crossed an existential line. We couldn't do that.
Yeah.
200,000 years of human history. Yeah. It's only been in the last 20, 30 years that we've had that. And we're still reacting with the same old notions that we've inherited out of history that has been transformed by the success of our power and technological extension to affect things. And on the reverse side, we could make a Peace Corps out of the whole world and make the world great for everybody in a way that we have an unlimited capability, but our systems won't allow us to do in a positive vein what we're fully capable of doing. Yeah. It's built in schizophrenia, and it's the leadership of the world that is at fault. They don't have a vision of how to get things together, if you understand what I'm saying. Yeah. So it's very dangerous and existentially challenging.
Yeah, it's tough times.
And it's good for people who have an understanding of what's going on in some of these really hot spots like you have. I take my hat off to you for having been involved in there. And your friend Consuelo. I think you're doing really great. Have you got it all figured out what to do now with the rest of your life? Or are you trying to work on it?
Hell no.
I was being facetious a little bit,
No, I think it's, I mean, they all, if you read up on cross-cultural interactions and going overseas and coming back, there's always this thing called culture shock.
Yeah.
And it applies too when you go back to your host,
Absolutely.
your home
Come
country.
to New York is culture shock.
And I think we could say we're going through that right now, but we're also kind of re-evaluating our values and what we want to do and how we want to make money, and do we want to just go back and rent ourselves by the hour to a company that we don't totally believe in, even when it comes to the UN. And
what about this question, if I may? What is this question? I threw it out a couple times. First, you're in Iraq, and then you're following in on the trail of Mr. Bush, and then you're into Afghanistan, following on the trail of Mr. Bush and Mr. Cheney, building their pipeline and this, and you're out there helping them. Yeah. This idea that you don't feel like a collaborator, and that if you help the United States of America in its thrust for things, and I love this country, but if you help the powers that be in what they're doing in the direction, and not only just Republicans, Democrats, the whole thing, if you help them, you're like collaborators, like as if you were collaborating with the Nazi Germany regime back in the 40s.
Say it.
You understand what I'm saying?
Say it like it is, Harold.
No, is it that bad? Is it that bad? And where does the alternative come from? If there is an alternative, because the leaders have no vision.
Let's take this whole patriotic red herring out, and put it where it belongs, which is way the hell over here. Because I love this country.
Me too.
But this country is part of the world, and I love this world, and I love my family, and I love the people that I've met in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I love the jerks that I talk to on the street that I think have no idea what's going on politically, and if we all did what they said, we'd all end up, like you said, in a nuclear apocalypse. I love
that's new, Gordon, within our lifetime. You see, we couldn't. The Second World War, we couldn't do it. We could bomb Dresden, bad enough, but there's something new there.
Yeah. So, but anyway,
and it just is not. It's just as though we're living in the 13th century.
Let's stay on the collaborator. The collaborators.
Okay. Yeah.
I mean, certainly you could say that, but for me, I had to go and I had to see these things.
Yes, I'm glad you come back as a witness
with my own eyes.
Sure, absolutely.
And I think that's our duty. I think that's all of our duty. And you don't have to go to Afghanistan to see things with your own eyes. Right. You can see what's happening right in front of you. You can see, all these economic and social indicators in the United States. They're only statistics, and you know what they say? 75.6% of all statistics are meaningless.
Anyway, maybe 90%. Yeah. Well, you can do anything with statistics.
Exactly, but you can see. But what do you see?
It's plutocratic. It's like back in the old feudal days. You got a divine right of kings or something.
So what do you see, and how does it add up to you? Forget what the TV's telling you, because the TV is they're all in bed together.
Well, the TV, we're on TV now.
We're all in bed together.
We're on TV. Well, all right. Now, are we by breathing? Are we collaborating with this thing? And you know what I'm saying? Are we all in this thing together? We all are negligent. But I do think that, if I may, that a Peace Corps fellow doing something, the thing you were doing, is you're doing something, you're trying to do something well in the world, trying to work well against the grain of what the established authorities are trying to perform. And that's been the lot of the mass of humanity throughout all of human history, it seems to me. You had the emperors of Rome, and the serfs were wallowing around in the mud.
Yeah.
And now they had a thing where the wealth is all owned by a super wealthy class of people who set all the templates. Everybody else are like slaves, wage slaves within the system.
There's different ways of looking at it. I've also read that actually, when you look at this slice of time, many fewer people are dying of starvation. Health and life expectancy have gone way up, and the quality of living has gone up for a lot of people. So I think in some ways we're at a platform as a humanity that we can tackle all these issues, because things are better. There are scientific and medical advancements and things like this.
Well, yes, that's true. Inevitably, I wouldn't want to live in a time when there was no such thing as anesthetic.
Yeah.
You had to get an operation by biting on a bullet or some damn thing, or history is a nightmare. But it is. But I don't think it could be that the progress we've seen and so forth is more in spite of the leaders rather than because of the leaders and the priorities that the leaders have. A lot of the things come from the citizens. Things are contributed and so forth, but it's not caught up, and it's all corralled by the few leaders who laid things like the emperors of Rome have always been a few people who led, and the people are just like, it's like we live in a big slave system that everybody seems to accept, and the template is all set by a few people.
But if we're bound by history, then we're fucked. But if we can imagine something different, then there's something.
Where do we go to find something different than what is being brought to us by the corporate structure and the powers that be at the top of the running thing?
Here's an idea.
I would suggest one thing I would suggest is a good NGOs, Peace Corps kind of thing, the kind of things you're doing. I would say in communication realm, I think this public access that we're talking about is something distinct from the superstructure.
Absolutely.
And it might be that if there are answers or other, challenges to the way things are organized or the assumptions, it's probably going to be coming out of something like public access or open source communication of the internet and that sort of thing. The more you're ensconced in the old system, the less you're going to find vision there of transforming it because they have an interest in maintaining it.
The danger there, which I'm noticing at home, is...
at home in your very home, or here in the United States?
No, in our very apartment.
I see.
Is getting lost in the technology. It's getting lost in the internet. What I think the most authentic thing it really comes down to is expressing ourselves, either one-on-one or in groups with people, like real live old-fashioned people.
Town hall meetings, huh?
Like this, and enjoying dinner with family, and whatever, and make the most of your life, and try to contribute less and less to the madness, and whether that takes varying. There are different options, from not paying our taxes because in fact we're all paying for this madness, or our grandchildren are paying for the madness because they've already written the checks on our account and we don't have any money.
They got these deficits that are growing really bad. It could be ushering in a real bad collapse.
I don't know, trying to working less and realizing you're not going to starve and you can actually be richer lives. That's one other thing I'd like to talk about from the experience I saw in Iraq and Afghanistan. Here's Iraq that has suffered 12 years under sanctions.
The sanctions were horrible.
How many years under war?
And Albright said it's necessary for what?
But for the record, she did retract it, but it wasn't because it was politically expedient at both times. They'd suffered under Hussein. But meanwhile, there's these very rich families and rich lives, and they had nothing in terms of the monetary value that we have in terms of the bank accounts that many of us have, or the access to credit that we have, and things like this. But they have rich lives. If we start dropping away the things that we think we need, and going to these kind of very basic things, whether it's sitting out on the stoop or enjoying family or enjoying friends, or just the basic glue of life, rather than running around and having to go to the gym and I don't know, all these things.
You've come up against
distractions. How many iPods?
You're coming up against that reverse culture shock now, aren't you? You're just going through that, aren't you?
The BlackBerry is a whole new concept. And iPods, I think iPods are totally cool, but I see so many people walking around just zoned into their own little world.
Right, that's a big theme, whether or not, because that's what the modern world's about, is the post-industrial world is about that. But it's, I understand. So you're going through that now. So we only got a couple minutes left, or a couple minutes left here. Have you got any clear direction in the way you want to go? I thank you for reporting on that. Are you going to do any writing? Have you written it up, or you got sites we can go to?
I don't have.
I know you worked with the Marsh Arabs a lot down there in the south.
Yeah, there's a couple articles that have been written about the work that we were doing, but I haven't written much. But I'd like to get started. I'd like to get started, but right now.
Did you bring back any footage much with you, or not?
I've got some photos from Iraq mostly, and my camera broke when I got to Afghanistan.
Oh, shucks.
I think these things happen for a reason. Maybe it wasn't the time. Exactly.
Inshallah, camera.
It wasn't the time.
Yeah, okay. Have you ever thought about doing work in a journalistic way or anything, or writing about what you've been busy doing? You're doing things. I remember you used to build houses and things in Balkans. But I mean, are you thinking of doing any kind of reporting or writing or summing up your
Consuelo
experiences, because
and I are talking about this a lot.
You've had a unique, you may not realize because you're just back, you've had a very unique and interesting personal experience that a lot of people would really be interested in know your perspective on things in depth.
Yeah, no, that's important that to be reminded of, because I think, oh, you know, this is normal. This is normal because this is my life.
I understand. Yeah.
But no, I'd love to share this with people one way or another, whether it's just, you know, whether it's through a mass medium, you know, like writing or publishing on the web or writing a book or something like that, or whether it's through one-on-one interactions, which is so rich for me.
You don't have an immediate project ahead of you, a group you're going to join, or a project?
No, I'm actually
Colombia.
looking.
You could go to Colombia where the drug wars are going on, or where else?
No, the war is here, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. The war is here, back here in Kansas, right?
Yeah, this is
right back home.
And this is actually where the war is. Understanding what's happening to each and every one of us, and how we relate with what's happening on the outside world. But no, we've been, Consuelo and I have been talking about this, what the next project is, and we realize that a big project, and maybe the most valuable project that any of us can undertake, is understanding ourselves and not immediately running back out of fear to a job. I mean, luckily we've got some savings, and we're in that buffer zone right now. But we're really trying to find out what matters to us, and where our hearts are, and what's authentic for us. You know, how we want to express ourselves in the few days we have left on this planet.
Well, you got more than a few days, and when you find that out, make sure you include that in your writings or communications to a broader world that's looking for the same thing. It seems to us a great deal. It might be the vision is going to come out of those people-oriented things. And I just thank you enormously for the work you've led. You've had a very well-led life, if I may say so.
Thank you.
And you and Consuelo, wish you all the very best. And I thank you enormously for coming in just a month or so after your return. Right, with fresh off the front lines, as it were, and thanks a lot.
Harold, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Been a great pleasure having the perceptions of Gordon Kindlon, and he's, as you can see, he's had a very interesting immediate experience. We'll check back over time with you.
I'd love to come back if you.
And let's work things together, and maybe we'll put you in touch with some other people here. And maybe we can get you over into communicating some of this stuff and everything.
I'd love to.
It's just really great to see you. It's nice to have met Consuelo. They look forward to getting to know you better.
Definitely.
Your pleasure to have his perception. We invite you to tune in. We'll be coming back again tomorrow. That's it for now. Once again, Gordon, thanks for everything, and thanks for coming in particular. It's really nice talking to you again.
Pleasure. We'll see you soon.
Okay. So, I mean, you just touched the surface.
But it was good. It was lively, and Consuelo was reminding me, don't speak from your head, speak from your heart. And so I realized there were a couple times when I'm trying to be intelligent.
Do you think you've gone through a big shift from when you were in the Balkans, psychologically or philosophically?
This life is such an amazing thing.
I know it is,
because you think it's this linear thing, but it just expands. And that life is definitely expanded. And some days it feels as small as a pea.
Right.
In other days, it's just overwhelming how rich and full it is.
Yeah, I know. It's an amazing time. This is the most amazing time to be alive and conscious and participant. You could have lived in the 6th century. It must have been awfully dull and slow. And now
it's all the same.
So you think? Yeah.
I think so. I think time is a bit of an illusion.
Yeah. But this seems interesting because you got a revolution coming in every field. Now, there's so much going on.
Let's hope we've got a revolution
coming. The Chinese
coming.
warned against living in interesting times, but these are really interesting, challenging times. And you've been right on the front line, it seems to me. I just think it's great. We're going to you have to come over and have coffee and
Please,
stuff. We can talk.
I'd love to. No, Harold, I feel like we're old friends.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, it's been. Yeah, we're going to get. You met the dog the other day.
Yeah, I met the dog.
You met some of the producers. Maybe you could do something here.